Hi there, I am the CRM Ninja, and on today's episode of the Oops Factor, I have Melissa Sassi. Welcome to the show, Melissa.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. As I mentioned when we were not recording, I think I've worn my spaceship shirt, like I'm getting ready to celebrate what's happening on Mars.
Have you seen the video of the copter, the
Not the
drone
whole
taking
thing.
off?
I've seen like snippets of it. I'm very famous at starting something and not finishing that something, and that's one of those somethings that I didn't finish.
Okay, I've only seen 9 seconds of it, so
It's on my list though. Okay, so then
it's
we've
it's
seen
awesome.
about the same amount.
Yeah, see, right, see, I'm following in footsteps, so
All
I,
right,
I like
good.
that. I like that.
Somebody's got to.
So for people who don't know Melissa, um, Melissa has several interesting things about you. So number one is you love traveling, which is why I have the background that I have of hot air balloons. But number two is that your official job title is Chief Penguin.
I
And
believe
of
you should
course,
make your job title whatever the heck you want it to be. I mean, I don't know if in, an HR file somewhere I'm either been written up or written about, or if that's included. But what I will tell you is if you log into, and you're an IBMer, so I'm an IBMer, but if you log into our corporate directory, you are going to find Chief Penguin. If you look in Slack, you're going to find the same thing. So, hey,
penguins are awesome.
I think they're in your baskets for
They are.
your
See, for
background.
people who may be actually looking very closely at the background, see, it's not people in the hot air balloons. These are penguins in the hot air balloons. See,
Penguinistas, they're my penguinistas.
yeah, penguinista. So, where does your love of traveling? How does it start? Where does it come from? How many countries have you
Yeah.
been to?
I've been to 55 countries and I hit my 55th country this year, yes, during COVID. My 55th country was the Dominican Republic, which I've developed this fondness for, and it keeps bringing me back. I just got back from the Dominican Republic on Saturday.
Wow.
And you know what really started it is my mom thought I was going off the deep end when I was in university. And she thought that I had the wrong friends, like many of us. How many of our mothers actually approved of our friends when we were growing up,
Yeah.
right? And of course, your mom probably doesn't realize that you were the bad influence and they were doing all those bad things because you made them do them. Your mom thinks it's everyone else, and you let your mom believe that, oh yeah, Kelly, she's bad. Yep, that other Melissa, she's bad. Now, my mom thought I was off traveling or going off the deep end. So she decided she was going to take me to a place where I could really see the deep end. I'm sure
Oh,
there was some math in there somewhere, but she
shock
took
factor.
me yeah, she took me to Amsterdam actually. And I don't
Wow.
know if it's appropriate what my mother told me to do, and what she expected me to do to get everything out of my system while I was there. But I will just tell you that my mother and I walked down the red light district. Now, don't worry, I didn't come home with a job. Um, we had the best time. And what I really loved about that trip is I felt like I was like submerged in this, I don't know, with culture and people and languages and architecture. And it developed into this fondness of traveling at first through Europe and then became the world and then became studying languages and really figuring out that what I wanted to do in life was, and I didn't have it all figured out then, like who does in their early
Yeah,
20s, but
very true.
it was, I wanted to do something international that involved people from all over the world. And I wanted to make the world a better place, but I didn't know what that meant at that time. And it took me a long time to figure out what that meant to me.
Got it. Wow. And the way you said, bringing over to Europe, I mean, that's something I say this very respectfully to Americans because I have a lot of American friends. I've traveled frequently to the States previously, but America doesn't have that sort of history of architecture and stuff.
Mm-mm,
The big towns
mm-mm.
are maybe a couple of 100 years old. You
I
don't
was
have that.
mesmerized. I was
Yeah.
absolutely mesmerized, and it just kind of grew into this, let's explore Europe. And then it became, wow, let's explore the Middle East. Let's explore Asia and Latin America and Africa. And yeah.
So when COVID lifts, where's your dream destination that you haven't yet been to?
Ooh, it kind of depends upon my mood. Um, but I have this place that I want to go to. And part of it is because I've been working with a number of people from the islands of Cape Verde. So the country of Cape Verde, which is off for those of you who don't know, off the west coast of Africa. It's a Portuguese speaking country. And I've done some projects with one of their ministries. And I met so many people. I feel like I have to go. I have to learn Portuguese. And I know that sounds like these big, lofty goals, but I would really like to go and spend a month traveling around Cape Verde and really experience the people and the culture and be able to do it in their native tongue. And hey, if I can pick up some Creole while I'm at it, I think that would be amazing. I had an opportunity to meet the Secretary of State virtually from Cape Verde, and two just really amazing artists. One, and both of them, they sing in Portuguese, and they often will mix in Creole into their music. And they're quite well known and famous in Cape Verde as well as in Portugal. And I did this project, this hackathon, and they came and spoke at this event. And I came up with this concept of doing this National Day of Code in Cape Verde. And I threw it out because I thought, I'm talking to the Secretary of State. If anybody can approve a National Day of Code, it's somebody who reports to the Prime Minister, right?
Yeah,
I threw
definitely.
it out there to see what he'd say. And he said, yes. And we created a National Day of Code in Cape Verde, and the Prime Minister and the Vice Prime Minister ended up doing a Facebook shout out to the day, my event, and all kinds of stuff. So I feel obligated to get to Cape Verde.
Definitely. That's a good place to go to from the sound of it. So moving on from penguins and travel to Oops Factor, what do you want to share with us today?
Ooh, so is this where I'm sharing a failure?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
All right.
lessons learned from it. It's not
Okay.
just about failing, it's about how we can take lessons and learn from it.
Oh, and I think we don't talk about we talk about failing, and we talk about failing fast, and we talk about learning from it. But how many of us truly get vulnerable and share our failures? Where, we're in tears, or we have to really go see a doctor because things are awful. Many of us are afraid to, come out and talk about those moments. I've talked about this, in a variety of different settings, and I think that I will share my worst nightmare, actually.
Okay.
And it's probably your worst nightmare. It's probably anyone's worst nightmare. And no, it's not standing up in front of an audience naked and realizing you forgot your pants at home.
That one isn't actually one of my fears. I'm not bothered by that one, just for the record.
I guess it depends on who's in the audience, For me.
I don't care. I mean, for me, it would depend more on the subject. Like, if I had to talk about IT matters, not a problem. If I had to talk about politics, then maybe there might be a problem there. But
Naked and
IT,
politics.
I
don't think those two go together, like naked politics. Maybe.
I don't know. They're naked dating shows together. And stuff. Yeah.
No, it's actually something super serious. I'll switch my excited, happy face to something more somber. 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, actually, my children and I became victims of parental kidnapping, and I never got my children back. And you might be asking, well, wait a second, how is this a failure? How is this a failure of yours? I know now that there were, many things out of my control that I couldn't have predicted or done. But for the longest time, I felt like it was my failure. Like mine and mine alone. And what I mean by that is, I had a lot of people who told me, hide the passports, hide the passports. And I thought, they're saying that because my ex-husband is from a certain part of the world where this is a stereotype. And I thought, no, this is a stereotype. This isn't real. This is a stereotype. This is not something that I need to do. And it turns out, and I'm not saying that, all people from this part of the world, do things like this, but it was something that actually happened in my life. And I have 3 kids. There's Zahra, Zahran, and Yumna. They're now 18, 16, and 14, but they were kidnapped when they were 3, 5, and 7. So I've had to learn how to be a different kind of mother than I ever planned. So it's almost like failure as a mother, failure as a woman, failure as, someone who didn't necessarily listen to all of the advice, that when things actually hit the fan, and many of even my family and friends said, well, why didn't you hide the passports? Okay, that's real helpful, everybody. Thank you. Why do I talk about this? Because it's my most vulnerable moment in my entire life. And I suspect, when anyone thinks about what's the worst thing that can happen to you, you die, someone you love dies, maybe get divorced, you're sick, you lose this, you lose that, whatever, losing your children, from losing my children was something that actually really happened. And what did I do about it? Well, I realized that I couldn't legally get them back, because I'm not going to win in a court case in Tunis, Tunisia. I'm just not. Significant amounts of corruption and red tape at that time. This was during the Ben Ali regime, before the Arab Spring, before the Jasmine Revolution. And I realized, through a lot of conversations, that I had to either get back together with him. That wasn't an option.
Okay.
I'm not going to go kill him, which was suggested to me multiple times.
International assassin? Just saying.
I strayed away from being an international assassin, even though I do kind of look like, in this outfit, I could be an assassin. Maybe not, because they'd see me coming like a mile away. So maybe
no, but see, it's the double take on it, because they think you're too flashy to be an assassin.
That's exactly
and then you're like,
right. Bah! That's exactly right. So, bribing wasn't working. And diplomacy wasn't working. And so I decided to play the long game, and decided that to let my kids know I love them, I exist, I'm here. And I taught myself how to speak his dialect of Arabic. I'm not great.
Were you able to have contact with them?
Yes, I knew exactly where they were. And so after 3 years, I built up enough strength to travel there, to this small village, somewhat small, outside of Tunis, Tunisia. And at first I had to stay with the family when I was there. And imagine that, it's hard, right? And I realized I needed to have my own network. I needed to have my own thing. And I needed to have something bigger that involved connections and making the world a better place. Because if I'm out making the world a better place, I'm influencing those around them. And I didn't know what that thing was. One day my daughter said to me, and this is when I was working at Microsoft. I'm an IBMer now. I left Microsoft at the end of 2018, where I spent 5 years. And when I was working at Microsoft, my daughter says to me, Mommy, I'm learning Microsoft. That's her accent. And I'm like, what do you mean?
Sweet.
And I realized she was learning Word in her classroom. And this is like 5 years ago, something like that, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And I realized that she didn't have her own computer. And I thought, well, I can't necessarily change digital inclusion around the world, or so I thought at that time. But I can get computers into her classroom. And so I set out on this mission to bring computers to her classroom. And I ended up landing just this amazing program with Microsoft and HP, where we sent 400 laptops to 20 schools across the country.
Wow.
And it inspired me to go out and teach digital literacy in that country with some engineering students. So I brought some Microsoft student partners from the country, and I took 3 weeks off from work. My boss gave me 3 weeks off. I traveled around the country teaching kids to code. And wow. We went to 26 governments, 26 places. We were on the Libyan border. We were on the Algerian border. We were in the Sahara teaching kids to code. And we all came back from this whirlwind trip around the country that was life-changing for a number of different reasons. One, it made me realize that I was onto something bigger than just my daughter and my son and my other daughter, or their or Colégio Kahna, where my daughter was going to school, or Minsa Bourguiba, Tunisia, where they were living. It was the country, it was the continent, the region, the world, and I realized that 50% of the world, and at that time it was more, now it's like 48%, lacks access to the internet, and significant populations of people lack access to digital skills. And how can you be prepared for the future of work if you don't have digital skills? So I saw an opportunity for me to take on this big challenge, and I knew I wouldn't solve it just by myself. But it became my life's work. And what I learned from all of this is that, you can overcome anything with community and with community action and by giving. And I know that sounds kind of like, so, I don't know, esoteric or whatever, but, I really found that instead of being the mother that I could have been, I should have been, I would have been, the world became kind of my family. And so I started this, kind of idea around, what if I build this movement? And that inspired creating my own nonprofit. I have a co-working space, a IoT lab, and a robotics lab in Tunis, Tunisia. We've now taught tens of thousands of kids to code in 12 countries.
Wow.
Our biggest donor is the US Department of State. And we talk with young people about deterring them from violent extremism, and how having access to digital skills is their pathway to having a job that is future proof, if you will. We do IoT, we do fun things with robotics, as I mentioned. Sometimes we are doing kind of e-commerce solutions, but we've gotten funding, small grants also from HP, from SAP, from Google. It's really been a lot of fun. It's all youth led and youth run, and it's very often that my kids will turn on the TV and they'll find something about my program. My ex-husband sees that too. And so now what this has given me and my family is access. I now have greater access to my kids because I'm creating this movement in the country that is bigger than me and bigger than them and bigger than whatever challenges I might have had in life. My daughter is now old enough to come back on her own, but she's finishing her school. As soon as she's finished with her school, she'll come back and go to university here in the US, and my other children will join me as well. But on their terms.
I look forward to the day
on their terms.
Happens. Yeah.
Me too.
Wow.
It was deep, right? You didn't know I was going to go that deep, did you?
I didn't know you were good. I am happy to be familiar with the story and information around it, but no, I didn't think you were going to talk about that. So wow.
I often teeter between, do I talk about, this deeply personal thing, or do I talk about, some random work failure? Because I've got those too. But I feel like being vulnerable is really important as a leader, even if you don't yet feel like a leader,
Yep. It's about that human side, the persona, the person you really are underneath all those corporate layers that you went into the office or obviously remotely at the moment and stuff. So
I think it's so important, because I think if you look at, I did one of those strengths finders things a while back where they look at your strengths and your personality and who do you work well with. And one of the things that it includes is, who are you at work and who are you outside of work? And are those people the same? And for me, my persona is almost exactly the same. There's a little bit of a difference, but for the most part, I'm a what you see is what you get kind of person. And I encourage others to be vulnerable. I encourage others to be authentic and transparent, and to talk about the stuff that maybe inspires others to be more transparent and authentic. Because I know for some, it's a scary thing, to show the real.
It can be very scary, and to make ourselves open up, to be able to expose ourselves to be vulnerable, can be very scary for some people.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's just what I know, and I don't know how to do anything else, because if I'm not being authentic and transparent, I feel like I'm lying. And then you can probably tell that I'm not being, I just am very self-conscious if I'm putting on a show, you know?
Wow. No, Melissa, that story and the travel and stuff and just that, I think is absolutely incredible. And really, thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me a space to, to share my stuff. I used to not be able to talk about it at all, and I would kind of make it seem like my kids were on this study abroad with their father kind of thing, because I didn't know how to talk about it without being emotional. But what I found is that by talking about my vulnerabilities, it is soothing, and it's soothing in some way. Um, on the 30th of this month, there's an event that I'm doing with my team here at IBM, and there's a number of IBMers who are on it, and a number of us are going to talk about our neurodiversity for the first time. So as I'm thinking about vulnerabilities, that kind of popped into my head about, we've all got different vulnerabilities and things that make us human, and we shouldn't be afraid, even no matter how scary they are or how painful they are, to talk about them when the time is right and with the right audience.
Very much agree. I know the people within the Microsoft space are starting to do the same thing. Donna Sarkar, for
Yeah,
instance, recently
I
has
love
come out around
her.
that.
I love her. She
She's
actually
amazing.
inspired me to talk about my own neurodiversity.
Wow. See, Donna, if you're watching this, see, right?
Hi,
We always tell
Donna.
you you're inspired. Got to
Yeah,
do the thing. Well,
do the thing.
indeed. Well, Melissa, thanks again so much for coming on
Thank
and
you.
sharing it. Viewers, we're the answer, challenges in life, whether they're small or they're large, personal things that are small can sometimes seem very large. We can try and look for other ways to handle it, like Melissa has done. So hopefully we learned some valuable lessons. Feel free to watch the rest of the videos on the Oops Factor playlist, subscribe to the channel, and take a look at the blog. And if you would like to come and share your own story, hit the link in the description, fill in your information, and I'll invite you on. But above all, have a wonderful day.